he was also not the same man. He was a disappointed, sad, guilty, angry, possibly dangerous individual.
Nerdrotic.com.
Alex Kurtzman's Star Trek is a lot of things. Unfortunately, one of them isn't Star Trek. For the second time in as many weeks, they have silenced the fans during their Star Trek Universe Comic-Con panel, which was a complete disaster. Now, my good friend Az from Heel vs. Babyface and I covered this yesterday, and CBS once again went on a copyright claim tear. We were hit twice. It's well known that CBS has always had something to hide when it comes to this franchise, and it's well known that they abuse the YouTube copyright claim system, but that's not the biggest takeaway from the Comic-Con panel. You see, Star Trek is no longer for entertainment. It exists to influence you because, according to Alex Kurtzman, Star Trek is now a platform. But before we get started, if you've accidentally come across this video, please make sure you are still subscribed. YouTube is doing their annual old account cleanse, and there's always collateral damage. If you've come across this video and you like what I do, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking and sharing the videos. And if you can do this with your favorite YouTuber as well, I'm sure they would appreciate it as much as I would, considering that we have to compete against the giant corporations on this platform like CBS, who likes to abuse the copyright system. Now, there's a couple things we're going to cover, but let's get right to it. Yesterday, Comic-Con at Home had the big Star Trek Universe panel. This thing was publicized everywhere. It was advertised on Twitter up to this very day. It was mentioned in The Hollywood Reporter, in Variety, in Deadline, and every other Access shill media site you can think of linking to this panel. And considering the reach of the three main trades, you would think they would have gotten a bigger crowd than they did. The turnout was pathetic. The only thing that equaled that was the production value. Now, let's hear what Alex Kurtzman has to say, and then we'll go over why Star Trek will never be a success under his guidance.
Are critical right now. Black Lives Matter, the NAACP, a lot of our casts speaking to that, Star Trek speaking to it. The goal is not really to promote Star Trek, but to promote these organizations and to use our platform to be able to bring greater awareness to these very, very important messages and places.
Well, that's a very worthy use of a very powerful platform.
And now I don't want to be lumped in with those celebrities who lecture people, who think they're above everything just because they've got a platform.
Hate to break this to you, Alex Kurtzman, but you are not an influencer. You were able to weasel your way into a beloved franchise that was made by your betters. Star Trek is not a political platform. It is not a partisan political platform. It is not a personal partisan political platform for Heather Caden, Michael Chabon, Akiva Goldsman, or Alex Kurtzman. Star Trek is for relaxing after a long day's work and you just want to enjoy a couple hours of television. It's for having on in the background while you're doing something. And it can be used to tune out a bad day or a bad week. I can't tell you how many people have told me in my live streams that Star Trek has helped them through depression, the death of a family member, the loss of a job. That's what Star Trek is for. And sure, you can learn some lessons through Star Trek, but that requires talent. Unfortunately, the people in charge of this show right now do not have it. You know, they broke out this hashtag Star Trek United and then promptly used it for their platform. Now, I don't want to bring on anyone's depression, so we're not going to go over this entire panel. I'll just give you some highlights right here. This will give you the gist of it.
And sometimes I feel like art can speak to some of those issues, perhaps even more than politics can, specifically when we talk about Star Trek, inclusion, diversity,
equality, gender equality, racial equality, sexual equality.
These are questions that have been submitted for all of you. This one's actually for me. How important is it to you to continue the tradition of Star Trek taking a social and political stance as you enter season 3?
It's about the infinite combinations of diversity, representation and visibility yet to be seen.
There is such diversity.
Acceptance, inclusion.
All things Star Trek already had, but it wouldn't be Kurtzman Trek without contradictions.
Gene Roddenberry said in the 23rd century there will be no sexism and no racism and no hunger and no greed.
That was pretty much it, folks. The only exciting thing that happened was CBS copyright claimed the panel at Comic-Con. From Deadline, Star Trek at Comic-Con at Home panel goes dark for a short spell over CBS copyright glitch. I'm sure those were glitches that hit my live streams as well. Updated with CBS All Access statement, which we'll pass on. The Star Trek panel at Comic-Con at Home digitally went where no one expected for a while today at the virtual confab. About 15 minutes into the sprawling offering from the ever-expanding Trekverse, oh my God, everything seemed to shut down at Comic-Con's YouTube site. As Sonequa Martin Green and others from the cast of Star Trek Discovery were delivering a table read, well, man, people should be thanking them for this, of their Such Sweet Sorrow Season 2 finale, the pre-recorded stream went dark. And yes, this cringe fest was pre-recorded and edited, and most of it was that brutally boring table read. But we did get one single announcement. Star Trek Prodigy is the animated kids show on Nickelodeon. This is Alex Kurtzman's genius idea to introduce children into Star Trek by putting it on a cable network that kids don't watch. This might have been a good idea if it was 2007 and the rest of Star Trek was good. We did get some news on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and tell me if this doesn't sound familiar.
In the past couple months, we have, of course, heard the great news about Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Give us a sense of where that's at.
The room has started. There are 10 stories broken, which is very exciting.
Okay, so what would you say is the status of the Section 31 show? Has that got a series order, or is it still pilot phase? How's that working?
Eric and Boy are just breaking story now.
So you have a series order?
We don't have a series order yet.
I'd love to make the excuse that CBS has just been cheap, and that's why they stick with Alex Kurtzman, and his contract is much smaller comparatively to the other showrunners in the streaming wars. But they've also put $8 to $10 million an episode into Star Trek Picard and Star Trek Discovery, and it's been a total embarrassment. And right in line with that is this Comic-Con panel.
Brilliant team of writers. We are living in a very different world, very complex world.
Don't you think he looks tired?
Profoundly troubled world, which might just be appropriate for the times that we're living in.
No, actually it isn't. And that's why Star Trek isn't working, and we'll talk about that a little later. But let's go to an article I went over in a live stream last week. Akiva Goldsman on how Star Trek Picard aspires to go where no one has gone before. We keep hearing that from these people, yet they don't have any original ideas. They copy everything and go where everyone has gone before. And we know what direction this show is going to go in, considering the events of the last 3 to 4 weeks. And Akiva Goldsman tells us, while productions everywhere have been on hold due to the coup that hasn't stopped work on Picard, and what's happening in the world is informing the show's storytelling, something that Goldsman says Star Trek has been keen to do anyway, as it's not value neutral. We aspire, we create the future, we fabricate. Well, they fabricate a lot, and we'll get into that. The future we aspire to. It's multicultural, diverse, empathetic, democratic, and all the things that we who make Star Trek want it to be, which it could be. Certainly, what's happening culturally right now is resonant for us. The only direction this show is going in is down, and they have no clue where to take it. When they say they listen to the fans, they're full of it. When they virtue signal, they are full of it. As woke as this show is and filled with intersectionality, that's not even the worst part. It's the writing. This is CW Star Trek, and I think I'm being mildly insulting to the CW.
What attracted you to doing Picard?
It's streaming. We get to use the F word.
Oh, and we got this bombshell.
Spock's interaction with Michael Burnham is essential to transforming Spock. Michael Burnham gives him the permission to be human. It's a huge character point for me and will dictate a lot of behavior for Spock because of his interaction with Michael.
Another example of intersectionality, agenda, and influence vandalizing a beloved character. Luke Skywalker only existed to open the door for Leia and be a stepping stone for Rey. The Doctor is now originally a female, and Spock was made by Michael Burnham. And for the second week in a row, we got a pretty good idea how many people are interested in this show. Not very many. This, again, was promoted by all the trades, all the access media sites, and Currently, it sits at 56, 57,000 views. This is Star Trek. It should have millions of views. I have live streams that have almost this many views, and they're unlisted. Also, the likes and dislikes have been disabled, as well as the comments. Once again, when it comes to Star Trek, the fans get canceled. It's almost like they don't want to hear from them. And I thought Comic-Con was supposed to be about the fans. In contrast, if you go to the Justice Con during the Zack Snyder Spotlight, they had their chat and comments turned on. So, and I've said this before, every time you see a visible metric related to this show, the numbers are extremely low, and I did not mean that to rhyme.
He was also not the same man. He was a disappointed, sad, guilty, angry, possibly dangerous individual.
And you know what? Aside from the dangerous part, that's what the fandom is right now. So we're going to end this with a question for the Picard panel that came towards the end of the live stream. And let me know if this sounds familiar. If you remember the Red Letter Media Picard review, that complete takedown, they suspected that a lot of comments they found were bots because they said a lot of similar things. Let me know if this question sounds similar to what they found.
And this is a particular question. This is very moving. And this is from Chief Kala N32. This is for Brent and Patrick. What was it like to have the closure we never had for Data and Picard? It was the first time art had ever had such an impact on me like that. I cried. My father and I watched the two characters develop together, and I wish he could have seen it.
We need our brains for this tear-jerking scene at the end of the season. Data says he loves butterflies.
I cried.
Bots to praise on social media. I'm sorry. Did I say bots? I meant people. Real people.
I cried.
Can't possibly be enough bots, people, non-Star Trek fans that really enjoy this shit to make it sustainable.
Show us the numbers, CBS, because I'm not buying that this show is a massive success. I'm guessing it's cost you a lot of money and you're just stuck with Alex Kurtzman. The only way you can turn this around right now and unite a large portion of the fandom, because I doubt very many people will be sad to see Kurtzman go, is to have Kurtzman go. Until you do that, Star Trek is dead. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.
Gene Roddenberry said in the 23rd century there will be no sexism.
Thanks to our brilliant team of writers, we are living in a very different world.
And no racism.
Profoundly troubled world.
And no hunger and no greed.